Hello, 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 and welcome back to Chakras and Cusswords. You cosmic body, you witchy maven. So today's episode is all about diving into the magical journey of becoming a witch. Or if that term feels too invasive for you, you could just say a mystical, magical fucking badass. But let's be honest, with this new, age of witches, we've really been seeing the soul or the spirit of new communities kind of exploring witchcraft. Or the term baby witch has really been taking the internet by storm. Now, I will tell you, the word witch to me has always kind of had a little sacred place in my heart. While I consider myself more of an alchemist versus a witch, it was a title that many people would often tell me I was. You must be a witch. You're just too fucking spooky and too non-traditional to stand out in any other way. So it must be your witchiness that's coming in front of us. And I'll be honest, there are some things about the energy of tradition that comes with witchcraft or your witchiness, or you could say your magic. One of the things is there's definitely a center of ancestral bonds. Most of the time, we learn from mentors or we learn from people in our families. Just the other day, I was talking to a friend and she was telling me how she always believed that one of her tias was a bruja or practiced in brujeria. And I will say that there's possibility, while it was never certain or never really a claim that yes, she was, she always had this feeling that this tia worked in the mystic or was centered in something a little bit more magical and spiritual. Often in the Latin or Hispanic community, we will see them more resembling the energy of possibly a witch doctor or somebody who is seen more as a healer than, I guess you could say, a witch. I definitely think that the energy that we learn as we are looking back at past events and traditions will really open your eyes on people who are in your ancestral lineage and also centered around the energy of the mystic. And I would tell you that one of the people who really was, quote unquote, a mentor or somebody who always stood out to me was definitely my father. He did a lot of work with herbs. He often seen herbalists. He often went to, I guess you could say, witch doctors. He definitely had a very unconventional way when you thought of healing and medicines. But understanding where your root is to how come you want to explore this witchiness about you is really the first step. So in this podcast, I'm going to lay out some of the energies that I think every baby witch should start to learn. For example, becoming a witch or getting centered with your spiritual journey that feels a little bit more intuitive and more collective on the center of rituals is something that takes place with your own confidence. You have to be confident with understanding that what you're doing isn't necessarily seen as approved by society, and having a clear understanding that people might approach you and actually deem you as some center of evil or some center of not holy. And as long as you are able to take in that energy and in some spaces trigger it back or rebuke it from the individual who's bringing that energy onto you, and have your own way of clearing that energy and standing right with who you are, then you definitely can live in the title of a witch. And there is no perfect witch. There is no witch that is perfectly accumulated or completely knowledgeable. There are some witches who definitely have been practicing longer than others. And there are some baby witches who are eager to learn. I will tell you, be cautious when seeking a mentor. Also, be cautious when you start to get into big witch communities. Understand what it is that feels right with you and your authentic and also center of empowerment, because witchcraft is not perfect. And we have to remember that most people who are practicing witchcraft are actually people, and they have errors, they have imperfections, they have ego, they have all these things that makes us so human, practicing something that is centered off of magic, moon cycles, crystals, herbs, and sometimes that energy of empowerment comes into an area that feels very tainted. So we also have to acknowledge that there is a very thin line between practicing witchcraft and getting so wrapped up into the energy of illusions and delusions that there might be some spiritual psychosis that could possibly occur. Spiritual psychosis tends to be a little bit alarming in the witch communities. And I definitely think that people need to acknowledge that it is a real thing. So before you get a mentor, make sure you understand that they are very well grounded. They very much have an energy that is centered here on earth. They understand that the spiritual aspect behind their craft, and they understand certain laws, certain energies that are very factual and aren't centered around illusions and disillusions. So now that I let out my public disclaimer, let's talk about breaking down the myths of witches. So witches have always been painted as very ugly women, often women who seem to allure men to the depths of hell, or men who are I guess you could say, easily seduced. The energy of a witch really stands into the movement of non-acceptance of traditional religions and have an area of spiritual aspect behind them. For instance, most witches aren't necessarily going to church on Sunday after spending a Saturday night, hexing everybody or moon gazing, but it is something that does happen. I will say I have met a lot of closet witches, and closet witchcraft to me just feels it just feels kind of depressing, because I feel like the witch or the lady who is very confused, or man, hasn't really understand that they need to heal their witch's wound. Now, healing their witch's wound is understanding that there's always going to be stereotypes of your craft. There's always going to be stereotypes of the witch, but reclaiming that title, reclaiming that energy of having confidence, of saying, yes, these are my spiritual practices. These are the energies of my craft. These are the energies of my intuition. And this is what feels good to me. This is what feels right to me. And allowing that nature, allowing that confidence to show, because somebody who has a witch's wound is going to be hiding from the not just from the public, but also from their family, from people who they feel might look down on them, or people who they feel might fear them, or people who they feel might, blame them for certain aspects. Now, many times people won't just go out and say, I'm a witch. I'm a witch. I do witchcraft. I'm a witch. I'm a witch. I'm a witch, right? There are some people who definitely keep it more hidden. And that is very important. But most of the time, your family and the people in your close circle are going to acknowledge that your spiritual practices or your craft or your energy of worship isn't necessarily the traditional or the one that society approves of. So as long as the people in your inner circle know what and who you are, and you acknowledge that, I would say that's beneficial. It's very sad when I hear that there's women who are like literally pulling tarot in their closet and then coming out and hiding all their witchiness because they don't want their husband to find out. He's going to find out. I mean, if you're that dominant of centered with your craft and your spiritual presence, there's really no way to hide it. He's going to find out because he's going to see it. Most of the time, your practices, it's very hard to hide, especially if you are keeping up on your spiritual regimen and you're keeping up on your spiritual movement and rituals, and some would even say your spell work or your craft. It's nothing that's easy to hide. It shows in your communication, it shows in your dialogue, it shows in your conversations. People are going to speculate that you might be a little witchy, and I would definitely say that somebody who is centered in that space needs to acknowledge that, and they need to address that, and they need to feel right with that, because a witch is confident. A witch is powerful. A witch is set in the mindset of understanding where they are in their spiritual practices, in their rituals, in their crafts, and they don't seek approval from anybody. Now, I understand there's a bunch of baby witches running around, and I love them. I do. I definitely remember the time that I was a baby witch, probably at the age of, I would say 13, was when I purchased my first witchcraft book. And in all honesty, I do not remember. I just remember always wanting to be outside as a kid, always wanting to be around energies that felt dark and spooky, around energies of creation, around energies of making things. The baby witch mindset is acknowledging that you're curious, acknowledging that you have a lot to learn, acknowledging that there's imperfections in the community, and acknowledging that there's going to be experiments. You're going to experiment on your craft. You're going to experiment on spells. I like learning of spells and making them your own, right? Like there's fundamentals to this, and creating your own spell. Don't necessarily go out and steal somebody's spell because you don't understand the intentions behind it. You don't understand the movement behind it. You don't understand the work behind it. There are definitely ritual books you could go out there and find, and you can use that spell work. But the first step is definitely understanding that there's going to be times where your craft's going to feel imperfect. You're not going to feel like you're in the right direction. You're going to kind of feel a little confused, and that's okay. Sit with that energy, practice again. See how you can use energies of ritual in the daily presence. Is it stirring your intentions into your coffee or your morning tea? Is it sitting outside, taking some breath work and talking to the sun? Is it being centered with the energy of movement? Now, if you are somebody who is very centered off of lineage and ancestral culture and learning about your ancestors, I would definitely say look for people in your ancestral pathways or deities or areas of goddesses or gods that you feel aligned with, and learn about them. Learn about how it is that you're going to intertwine them into your craft. The first step, I would definitely say that a baby witch or a new witchy person should understand is your craft is your own. Journaling and cleansing your space is important, very important. How you decide to use these movements, it could come in different forms. It could come in painting, it could come in journaling, it could come in the energy of just writing, intuitive writing. It could come with the energy of cleansing your space, if that's with water, if that's with smoke, if that's with really understanding that a witch's coven is clean for the most part. Now, a energy of clutter will always come back. And if you have free flowing energy, the movement cycles quite nice. Now, witchcraft, I will tell you, can be fucking messy. There's a lot of herbs, there's a lot of salt, there's a lot of movement where it does get messy. Find an area or an altar that feels right to you, right? Obviously, that feels centered, that you can keep your belongings, you could keep your resources and tools safe. You don't have to worry about people messing with them or people using them, right? There's all kinds of tools. There's crystals, there's herbs, there's tarot cards, there's, meditation, there's candles, whatever it is that you want to use, make sure you use it and keep it safe. I have an area that's dedicated to my practice. While I do have crystals all through my house, I have an area that is dedicated to my house. People see it. It's hard not to. You have, most people have tons of stuff, right? It's a ritual. It's a practice. People hold on to things because they don't necessarily know when they're going to use them. One day I might need a feather. One day I might need cinnamon. One day I might need salt. One day I might need mugwort. It just depends on what it is that I'm centered on. So a lot of times I will collect stuff and I will have an area that I keep it. Building your own practice is the main focus, right? Where it is that you want to be centered with. I have definitely talked about that there's almost like a block or a guilt that comes with being a witch or being a modern mystic or being somebody who's centered off of magic. Many of us were raised in religious households, and sometimes that's why witchcraft feels almost so familiar, because it is a sense of acknowledging there's a higher power. There is a sense of acknowledging that there is something out there. If it's God, if it's the universe, if it's you within you and your own spirit, you understand that there's something out there. There's something in the cosmos that intuitively speaks to you and intuitively feels so right. But for others, it might definitely come into an area where it's very stereotypical, right? It's very bad, or it's very shunned upon. And understanding that your curiosity should come with no shame is very much the first step. So I would definitely, first step is feel right with your center. Also, we must break up the Hollywood stereotypes of witches. And I do have a little a little series about like the Hollywood witches. Most of the time the Hollywood witches are people who are very spiritual or people who are very connected to their ancestral lineage, people who are very much centered around simple practices that many of us do. Everybody loves to give witches a bad name. Everybody loves to make it seem like witchiness should be shunned upon, when in all actuality, it shouldn't. It's been here before many of the religions. It's been here before many of the practices of religious practices that we have today. So understanding that there are definitely some simple practices that everybody should do. And that would be grounding yourself and protection. Now, grounding yourself and protection is a daily practice. Grounding yourself and protecting yourself from people who have these stereotypical mindsets, who are just not educated, who just do not understand that the area of emphasis around deeming women to doing something dark and sinister and evil is centered around anything that is outside of, I guess you could say, modern Christianity or the church or certain aspects. So any woman who has confidence, who has stood up for herself and who has practiced areas of protection is probably considered a witch. So just acknowledge that anytime a woman stands up to herself, she's probably considered some act of evil, some act of witch, right? Some act of, just a horrible, horrible woman. Because how dare her stand up against society and reclaim her own strengths? How dare she does that? One of the other things I would say as a tip is working with your energy and your intuition, listening to your inner voice. Now, there's definitely people who feel right with going down the pathway of meeting mentors, meeting people in your community, meeting people who can influence you, who can show you energies around the practice. But I will tell you, listen to your inner voice, connect with nature. Before you connect with anybody on TikTok, before you connect with anybody on Instagram, before you connect with anybody anywhere else, listen to your intuition, listen to your inner voice. Meditation, grounding, connecting with the moon cycles, connecting with the energy around you, connecting with nature, connecting with the birds, connecting with the insects, connecting with your own energy. Before you start looking for outside sources, make sure your connection with the universe feels right with you. Your connection with nature feels right with you. Allow your witch wound to definitely heal. Understand that fears about judgment and doing wrong things or doing bad things might be focused on you. Understand that your witch's wound and your spirituality is something that is sacred in your heart, and that you have the strength and intuition to know when to protect it. Also, definitely be centered on understanding that there is much more in witchcraft and being witchy or magical and mystical than just doing spells. A lot of times most witchy people aren't necessarily doing spells every day. They're either centered with acknowledging their own energy, grounding, protective work, clearing, understanding that there's a lot of collective trauma and there's a lot of collective stereotypical natures. There's a lot of collective energy that shuns them. So most of the time, they have to be centered in their own spiritual presence, in their own spiritual essence, understanding that people are going to feel like you're being too much, you're being too dramatic, you're being too weird, you're being too strange, and they don't necessarily like it. So understanding that witchiness isn't just about doing spells constantly. It's much more than that. We have to understand that there's an awareness that takes place with calling yourself a witch, and understanding that there is a awareness that takes place in understanding what is right and what is wrong for you. Now, there's many cultures, there's many practices, there's many rituals that me personally, I don't necessarily do. Not because I think they're wrong, but for me, spiritually, it's just nothing that is something I want to do, or it's not necessarily my craft. It's not my practice. So we definitely have to understand that having that awareness of your intuition and what feels right to you. I would say for a baby witch, if you are a baby witch, my main focus, me personally, because I remember being a baby witch at 13 and sitting in trees and, you know, having scuffed up knees and using that blood for some of my little rituals. I would definitely say when you are a baby witch, you definitely have to have your own interpersonal mindset. You definitely have to have your own interpersonal feeling of understanding where your magic is, understanding where your presence is, understanding what it is that feels right for you. A lot of times, I would work with protective practices in the beginning, because we have to remember that witchcraft has become a business. A business. A lot of these witches are out here to not just teach, but also to make money. So you want to understand that it's kind of like the coaching, right? The life coach, and nothing against life coaches, but it's kind of like the coaching pyramid, right? We see a lot of people who get sucked into the coaching pyramid where they become, you know, a coach, and then now they gotta get so many coaches to get more money or something like that. It's like a pyramid scheme. And with witchcraft, there's a lot of times where there's people who are going to want to train you. There's people who are going to want to show you the ropes. There's people who are going to want to get you to buy a reading, get you to, you know, definitely pay money to learn from them. And I will tell you, you can do that. Just make sure that the person that you are giving your hard-earned working money is centered with the right, I guess you could say, awareness, and also centered with the right knowledge that you are seeking, and also ethics. There's an energy of ethics that comes into witchcraft. You know, some people morally have different standards, but make sure it aligns with yours. Okay. Just don't be like surprised if they're telling you have to do all these things, you know, give them all this money, and you're just like kind of like, okay, where does it end? Where does it end? Do you know what I mean? Like you probably don't need to pay for like a protection spell every week. I would hope not. My favorite practices for the modern baby witch would definitely be moon magic. Moon magic and learning about the cosmos, to me, is one of my favorites, as you could tell if you were listening to this podcast. So working with the moon cycles, new moon intentions, full moon energies, full moon illuminations or new moon releases, whatever it is, full moon release. A lot of people like to do new moon intentions, starting a new cycle for new moon. Some people do full moon releases. Some people create big, massive spells during our big, massive intention work or ritual work around a full moon. However you decide to do your full moon intentions are up to you. However you decide to do your full moon rituals, meditation around a full moon is always magnificent. Journaling, charging crystals, doing rituals based on the lunar energy, I totally love. Tracking your emotions with the moon, tracking your period, your menses with the moon cycle. Also tracking the energy that you feel with the moon phases, learning the moon phases. Definitely, I would say a number one for a baby witch. Also, I will tell you this. The older you get, your body changes. Me, I was always a full moon menses. My menstruation started full moon, new moon cycle. The last I'm, creeping up with premenopause, the last cycle I had, I think, started on fucking Mercury retrograde. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. You gotta be fucking kidding me. And I think it ended, or it started again, because it's like 3 weeks, the day that Mercury became direct. I was like, what? I'm now aligned with Mercury? Mercury retrograde. I object to this cosmic energy. I rebuke it. So definitely understanding the moon phases, the energy of the cosmos. I'm not saying become a full astrologer unless that's something you want to do, but definitely understanding that the energy of the cosmos and some of the things that really take place. You will see that a lot of witches definitely love a full moon. Okay, they might not know everything that's going around with the cosmic energy or astrology, but they definitely know when a full moon is out. Tarot and oracle decks. If you are a baby witch, go out and get yourself a tarot and oracle deck. Now, there is like all these controversies. You have to be gifted one. Absolutely not. Absolutely fucking not. That's like saying you have to be gifted your first witch book, your first book of, crafts, or your first book of spells. Absolutely not. Go out and get yourself a tarot deck, one that speaks to you. Preferably, if you can go into a spiritual shop or a witchy shop, I would do that. If there's none in your location, then definitely look at some of the tarot decks online. A lot of people like to show off their decks. Look at the decks online, find one that speaks to you. If you feel like you're not ready for tarot, then start with oracle. Using cards are definitely around self-reflection, guidance, and also intuition, shadow work. And many mystics, many modern witches will pull a daily tarot card for insight. Oracle decks are great for beginners because they aren't as centered on like meanings and areas of a full spread, but they're more centered off of just acknowledging your intuition. Me personally, when I was learning tarot, one of the first things I did was I would pull the book and kind of like put it to the side. I wasn't reading the book because the book, tarot comes with a little booklet. I wasn't reading the booklet. I was basically pulling the card and seeing what I felt when I pulled the card, seeing what intuition I felt with pulling it. Crystals are centered around witchiness, obviously, right? carrying crystals, meditating with crystals, learning crystals. There are books that are centered off of learning certain types of crystals. Crystal quartz clarifies and clears, amplifies energy, seen as a cleanse, kind of like selenite. Amethyst, intuition, calming. Black, tourmaline, usually around protection or some energy around that. Candle magic definitely can get deep and heavy. So candle magic can be like writing your intuitions, burning the candles of specific colors. For instance, green abundance magic centered around wealth or money. Love could be pink or red. Black for protection, or even maybe used in a hex. Definitely start off a little bit small when you are doing your candle magic. Also, it's very simple and powerful to find candles that are affordable and then dress them up with herbs, oils, anything. But please remember fire safety. Herbal magic. Now, using herbs, definitely very, very potent for a witch. You will start to collect stuff. So herbs could be used to ingest. They can also be used, definitely research them. They can also be used in baths, spell jars, and even burning. So common herbs, of course, rosemary for protection, lavender for calming, cinnamon for abundance and also protection. A kitchen witch is always using herbs. I would definitely say when you cook with intentions. No man wants to eat from an angry witch. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. As she speaks ill about him into the soup she is stirring. Meditation and visualization is very powerful for a witch. So understanding your body, understanding your mind, grounding energy before you do spell work, visualizing your desired outcomes. You visualize that path. Now, many of you guys know I manifested or visualized my dream job before it came into fruition. That did take some work. There is some steps you have to do. You have to go out there and, fix your resume, but there are some steps you have to do. Are there things about the job I don't like? Yes, definitely. No job's perfect. But for the most part, I got the 3 main things on my list that I wanted. And when you are working with visualization and you are working with the area of creating intentions, you want to understand specifically what it is that you want. Now, with witchcraft, a lot of women or men sometimes don't get as specific as I need you to get, especially to make that abundance flow quite nicely. Journaling and shadow work. So a witchy witch needs to know that she has some shadow work to do. Everybody has shadow work. But if you are centered around that energy of creating intentions, you have to also look at the energy of shadow that can be prohibiting those intentions to not occur. So shadow work prompts are centered around healing wounds and unlocking hidden patterns of the self, of you. You are your fucking shadow. Spell jars. A lot of people like spell jars and sigils. Creating intentions, jars with herbs, crystals, and charms. Definitely, if that is something that you're into, pick your craft, work with it, however it is that you desire. There's also, I would definitely say I'm definitely one who is part of the digital witchcraft community. I definitely like making digital little reels that are centered around certain aspects, certain rituals, certain energies. It helps share. It also helps share inspiration, and it helps share keeping the craft alive. To me, it's kind of, to me personally, it's kind of like intuitive and creative. I've always been somebody who's been centered around painting and artwork. So it's just another form of art, but with a more technology aspect. So definitely, if you are looking on online witch communities, I will say there are many witches who I am very fond of, like the Hood Witch. I like OG Goldie. She's on TikTok a lot. There's a lot of definitely witches who I think you can learn from, who are morally encompassed in areas that feel right. And a lot of these witches do have courses. They also have mentorships. They have group coaching. They have covens. They have all of their little areas where you can learn from their community and become part of their community. But I would also say getting to know people too is important in outside of TikTok and outside social media. So getting to know some of your local witches, that means going to the local bookstores, maybe crystal shops, metaphysical fairs, conventions, stuff like that. There's definitely some shop owners, yoga owners who have like full moon circles. They might have full moon classes, and it might not necessarily be a witch, but is definitely somebody who practices different forms of spirituality. Also, we have to remember that the coven and exploring the circle can feel a little bit, intimidating, especially if you don't have friends who are necessarily baby witch like you. So you're going to have that confidence to go out there, do some research, and meet some people on your own. And you will be surprised how easy it comes. I've definitely will tell you, I have met a lot of women of the craft on my own, going out, showing up to their moon circle, showing up to their yoga, showing up in their spiritual shop, taking time to not just browse and look, but actually introduce myself, let them know, what I practice. I practice astrology, I have a podcast, let them know, kind of like, we're on the same vibe, girl. We're on the same vibe a little bit. So my top herbs that I'm going to give you for being a baby witch: rosemary. Rosemary is seen as protection, purification, memory, and healing. You can buy rosemary. You could plant rosemary. Rosemary grows like a freaking weed. You could burn it like you are burning sage. It's a perfect substitute for sage. Also, you could add it to the bath. You can use it in cooking. It is known as the witch's herb. It's almost like the fundamental witch's herb. It's an amazing herb. Lavender. Lavender is seen as very relaxing. You could buy lavender oil. You can get your own lavender plant. Seen around peace, sleep, love, relaxation. It's a calming herb. You could also sprinkle it under your pillow. You can make a sash, a little bag to put under your pillow. You could add it to tea bags, baths. Also, it has a protective layer to it. It is essential in soothing and calming the energies of the witch, and also the energies that the witch might be exposed to, as she is so beautiful and powerful and just living in her daily life. Another plant, I guess it's not necessarily a herb, but a plant is roses. I love roses. I have always loved roses. I remember that was probably and roses are used in so much work. Love, beauty, self-confidence, heart healing, understanding the energy of the petals, understanding how the rose was obtained. Was the rose given to you as a gift from a potential lover? Possible. Was the rose given to you from your own garden? The beauty that comes with roses is so tantalizing. They're like vicious with those nasty thorns, but they're so beautiful. Definitely around self-confidence and love spells have I used many roses. Rose water, you can make like an aura mist, also love spells and self-love spells. Roses connect you to the femininity of your divine nature, and it's also perfect for love magic and sex magic. I love to hold on to roses and keep the petals, especially dry them out, maybe use them again, especially if you're working with a potential lover and you were gifted them. Yes, honey, yes. Cinnamon, magical uses around cinnamon, abundance. I see a lot of witches love to do the abundance spell where they where they I guess it's, they blow the cinnamon into their home the first day of, the new month for abundance. Definitely whatever practice feels right for you. Me and my love of cinnamon, it's used quite frequently at my house. I actually ingest cinnamon daily. It's centered around abundance, luck, speed, passion, and the area of protection in some aspects. Prosperity, like I said, cinnamon is always in my house. You could sprinkle it in your coffee. You could blow it in your doorway. You could sprinkle it around the corners of your house. It also helps protect against ants too. Just want to tell you guys that. And the cinnamon sticks, some people burn them, some people write on them, some people use them as spell jars. Mogwort. So mogwort is a herb that I do use, and also frankincense quite frequently. Mogwort is definitely seen as the energy of intuition, dreams, and psychic visions, but also protectiveness. Now, sometimes if you're having like a lot of dreams, you might need to do some mogwort clearing. You might also need to have it on hand, because I'm going to tell you, when you become good at your craft, you will be surprised how many people want to talk to you and want to ask you stuff, right? I definitely have mogwort on hand because it's not necessarily something that people are like, oh, I'm at a spiritual shop, I want to buy sage, right? But nobody thinks to buy mogwort. So I always have a little extra bundles in case I need to give them to somebody, in case I need to give somebody a little kit, a little protective kit. So some people use it for intuition. I definitely would use it and frankincense around intuition, heightening that intuition. Some people actually do ingest it in very, very, very small amounts. Okay. I'm not saying go ingest it. Okay. I'm saying burn it. I'm a big burner. I like to burn things. And also using the area of smoke. So some people place it near their bed if they want more dreams. Some people use it to burn it to clear away certain energies, especially if you witness something. I would use it for a protective layer. It's seen as the dream herb. So if your protective layer needs to get a little thicker, you're having some very intrusive dreams, you might want to clear the energy, especially with some mogwort. And also with some clearing of your own aura, right? Especially around the crown and the third eye. People also use frankincense. I use frankincense a lot around intuition and thinking. Also basil for prosperity and protection. Basil's a big one, and chamomile. Now, I know many of you guys are saying you didn't mention sage. Well, white sage is almost extinct. And I think, You can use regular sage if you want just cooking sage, but I'm not necessarily going to promote using white sage unless you are native. I think we should definitely save white sage for the indigenous population. I do have a white sage plant. My father is indigenous. He practices herbalism, and also for me, I feel like as long as I grow it, it's okay. So unless you want to grow your own white sage, go ahead. But buying it off of the spiritual shops, it's not ethically resourced, and it's just not really worth it for the community. And we have to preserve our community, right? We have to preserve our indigenous practices. But salt, every witch needs some salt. Salt for purification and cleansing and protection. Yes, grounding and amplifying your magic. Okay, so salt, the element of earth. And I'll definitely give more little rituals and tips in podcasts, but I just want to give kind of like a scheme, because I know there's a lot of baby witches out there, and it's a messy situation, right? When you're first learning, and you're first kind of learning your intuition, you're learning your energy. So take your time. Remember to keep up with your own spiritual hygiene and do your own protective practices. Be open and mindful when learning in this community, but also be very protective, right? And be protective of your own energy and know where you stand in your own morals and ethic beliefs. Remember, not everybody's practice is for you, and your practice is not for everybody else's. And everybody have an amazing day. Bye. Please like and comment and share this podcast with your baby witchy bestie. Bye.